The story begins with a high school student named Gyeon, who attends Daehan High School. Every morning, he drags himself out of bed and heads to school, but it is obvious that he hates being there. After years of suffering bullying and abuse from his classmates, all he wants is for his remaining 2 years to end as quickly as possible. One day, when he arrives at school, he witnesses his friend Dae-suk jumping from the roof. We soon learn that Dae-suk had been relentlessly bullied and abused by other students, especially two troublemakers named Gwon-soo and Jun-hyung, who constantly humiliated and tormented him in class. Even after Dae-suk's death, the bullying at school continues. Gyeon becomes the next target, particularly at the hands of Hyung, the son of a powerful politician. The abuse becomes so unbearable that Gyeon repeatedly considers taking his own life, but he never finds the courage to go through with it. One day, Gwon-soo is brutally beating Gyeon in front of everyone. Unable to fight back, Gyeon simply cries as the students watch. Suddenly, a stranger appears and knocks Gwon-soo down with a single punch. The mysterious man then beats Gwon-soo so badly that the bully cannot even defend himself. The entire school is left stunned, wondering who this man is. Soon, Hyung arrives and demands to know his identity. Many students assume he is a new teacher, but the man introduces himself as Jin, an inspector from the Education Rights Protection Bureau. Showing his identification card, he explains that the organization was recently established to combat violence and abuse in schools, and Daehan High School is their first assignment. The students remain curious about the newcomer. Later, Jin enters their classroom and announces that he will be teaching them from now on. While taking attendance, he asks if anyone knows why Dae-suk took his own life. One student responds mockingly, so Jin immediately disciplines him. He then orders every student to lie down on the floor. Hyung refuses and tells the others not to obey. Since the students fear him, they hesitate. However, Yin quickly puts Hyung in his place with a powerful strike. Instantly, everyone becomes silent and does exactly as they are told. During lunch break, the students head to the cafeteria, only to find Jin already there serving food. When Hyung receives his meal, he deliberately throws it into the trash. Jin refuses to ignore the disrespect. He grabs the food and dumps it all over Hyung's clothes. The entire cafeteria bursts into laughter as Hyung stands there humiliated. Later, Jin visits the home of Congressman Gwang and meets Hyung, the politician's son and one of the school's worst bullies. Jin warns the congressman that his son has gone too far and needs discipline. Otherwise, he will teach the boy a lesson himself. He even grabs Hyung by the ear and punishes him by making him clean the school bathrooms. After learning that the herb was established by Education Minister Gang-sok, the furious congressman storms into the school and begins threatening Jin. Meanwhile, Gyeon once again attempts to take his own life, but fear stops him at the last moment. Standing near the edge of a rooftop, he is approached by Jin, who talks him down safely. Jin takes him aside and gives him some advice. Instead of ending his life because of bullies, he should fight back whenever he can. And if he cannot fight, then he should at least run away rather than suffer in silence. From that day forward, Jin and Gyeon gradually become close friends. At the same time, Congressman Gwang confronts Education Minister Gang-sok. Furious about the new agency, he demands to know why it was created in the first place. The minister calmly explains that the organization was formed after a tragic incident 2 years earlier when a student killed a teacher. He never wants such a tragedy to happen again. The congressman angrily asks why the agency was sent specifically to Daehan High School, claiming that one of the inspectors is harassing his son. Gang-sok responds that he did not even know the congressman's son attended that school. The politician continues arguing and defending his son, but the minister refuses to back down or give him the answer he wants. The story then shifts to a crowded election campaign event filled with reporters and protesters. Demonstrators have gathered to speak out against Congressman Gwang, accusing him of corruption and abuse of power. Furious, the congressman confronts Education Minister Gang-sok. We soon learn that the minister was behind the investigation after discovering that the congressman's son played a major role in the tragedy that led to a student's death. The congressman angrily asks, "Why would you do this to me? We were supposed to be on the same side." However, the minister calmly replies that he had no choice. Someone needed to teach his son a lesson before more innocent lives were ruined. Soon afterward, following a case filed by the Herb, the congressman is arrested and taken into custody. The next day, the tables turn on Hyung. The students he once terrorized begin taking revenge on him. For the first time in his life, he realizes that the only power he ever had came from his father's influence, and now that protection is gone. Meanwhile, Gion stands near the spot where his friend Dae-suk took his own life. Overcome with grief, he breaks down in tears. Hwa-jin approaches him and comforts him, assuring him that none of what happened was his fault. While they are talking, they suddenly notice students running in panic. When they rush over to see what is happening, they find Haeyong standing in the middle of a crowd with a container of gasoline. Driven by anger and revenge, he has poured gasoline on several students and is threatening to burn them alive. Hwa-jin stares at him and says, "It seems you still haven't learned your lesson," and lights a cigarette lighter. Flames immediately erupt around Hyung, coming dangerously close to engulfing him. Terrified, Hyung completely breaks down. Crying and screaming, he begs for mercy. "Please forgive me. I've learned my lesson. I promise I'll never do anything like this again." Hwa-jin extinguishes the flames and looks at him coldly. "The same fear you're feeling right now is the fear Dae-suk felt before he died. He was terrified too, and he didn't deserve what happened to him. No matter how sorry you are now, Dae-suk will never come back. You still have to face the consequences of your actions." Soon afterward, Hyung is sent to prison, and the school is finally cleansed of the students who had been spreading violence and abuse. Later, Minister Gang-sok visits his daughter's grave and places flowers beside it. Hwa-jin joins him after successfully completing his mission of eliminating the bullying problem at Daehan High School. However, the Herb soon becomes the target of public protests. Many people question the organization's authority and methods. In response, the minister addresses the media. He explains that school administrations have repeatedly failed to protect students and teachers, forcing the Ministry of Education to intervene. He declares that the Herb exists to safeguard everyone's rights and put an end to crimes inside schools, including bullying, sexual abuse, gang activity, alcohol abuse, and violence. The story then moves to a new location, Gwyn Technical High School. A new student named Bong-gun Dae transfers into the school, only to discover that it is completely controlled by gangs. Students are constantly bullied, extorted for money, and forced into criminal activities. When Bong enters his classroom, he is shocked by what he sees. Nearly every student has gang tattoos, openly smokes drugs, and carries weapons inside the school. Their violence is not limited to fellow students, they even threaten and abuse their teachers. Before long, chaos erupts. Students begin pulling out weapons and attacking one another. Knives, metal pipes, and even heavy automotive tools become weapons as rival groups clash inside the school. While trying to understand what is happening, Bong is approached by a student named Kim Hyung. He explains that the fighting is between students from the automotive department and the electrical engineering department. Both groups are competing for the favor of a powerful gang leader named Gwon Haeok. The winning group will earn the privilege of joining his organization. At the same time, the Herb has already been monitoring the situation. They are preparing a major operation to dismantle the gangs and turn the school back into an actual place of learning instead of a battlefield. Elsewhere, one of the bullies forces a newly transferred student and the class's most loyal and hardworking student to fight each other. "Fight to the death," he says cruelly, "and after one of you loses, I'll beat the winner too." After the fight ends, the bully keeps his promise and begins beating the weaker student anyway. It becomes clear that this boy is the school's favorite victim. He is poor, quiet, and completely devoted to his studies. Despite the constant abuse, he dreams of getting an education and changing his life. Bong quickly becomes friends with him and starts learning more about his difficult circumstances. Wanting to understand him better, he even visits the boy's home and sees the hardships he faces every day. The following morning, Hwa-jin arrives at Gwyn Technical High School. He approaches Kim Hyung and asks why he continues coming to school when he gets beaten almost every day. Kim struggles to answer, but Hwa Jin reveals that the herb has already started investigating his case. Their next mission has officially begun. It is then revealed that Bong, who had been pretending to be a newly transferred student, is actually an undercover member of the herb and part of the operation to eliminate the gangs controlling the school. One day, Bong deliberately provokes several gang members and leads them straight to Hwa Jin. The gang members immediately try to intimidate him and even attempt to attack him. Hwa Jin calmly introduces himself as an herb inspector and explains the rules and standards that should exist in a proper school. The students, however, have no intention of listening and decide to attack him instead. Unfortunately for them, Hwa Jin is far more skilled than they expected. None of them can even land a proper hit on him. Instead, he effortlessly defeats every one of them, leaving the gang members battered and broken. Afterward, he gathers the students and introduces a new schedule, explaining how many hours they are expected to study each day. Even then, the students refuse to behave. Some try throwing objects at him, but Hwa Jin quickly teaches them another unforgettable lesson. Before long, they are all sitting quietly and behaving like proper students. Later, the regular teacher enters the classroom and begins writing a lesson on the board. One student raises his hand and sarcastically claims that he does not have a pen. Hwa Jin immediately punishes him, and the student's attitude disappears at once. The other students who refuse to take notes receive similar discipline until the entire class begins cooperating. Soon, two of the school's most notorious troublemakers refuse to participate in a practical training lesson. Hwa Jin responds by taking them on a ride in a damaged vehicle, driving them around the city until they are completely exhausted and terrified. He is about to punish them further when Kim Hyung steps in and stops him. Later, Bong asks Kim why he defended those two students. Kim explains that he was worried the situation would create more chaos and cause classes to be canceled again. Meanwhile, the two troublemakers decide to escape from school. They want to meet the powerful gangster Kwon Hyuk, who recently chose their group after they defeated a rival faction. Bong notices their plan, and they convince him to help them sneak out so they can meet the gang leader. Pretending to cooperate, Bong follows them. Afterward, all three return to class. The two troublemakers immediately begin provoking Hwa Jin. At that moment, the classroom door suddenly opens, and Kwon Hyuk himself walks in. Without hesitation, the gangster challenges Hwa Jin to a fight. The two exchange blows in front of the entire class. After a brief battle, Hwa Jin is knocked to the ground. The students immediately erupt into cheers, chanting Kwon Hyuk's name, feeling victorious. Kwon Hyuk proudly announces that he will never allow the herb to control his school. But then Hwa Jin slowly gets back to his feet. It turns out he was only pretending to be defeated. In an instant, he launches a fierce counterattack and begins overwhelming Kwon Hyuk with powerful punches. We then learn that capturing Kwon Hyuk was Hwa Jin's real objective all along. The gangster was the mastermind responsible for turning students into gang members and encouraging them to fight and harm one another. After defeating him, Hwa Jin places him in chains and drags him in front of his followers. The gang members immediately rush forward to rescue their leader, but they fare no better than he did. Hwa Jin defeats them one after another, breaking their fighting spirit completely. The students watch in shock. Many of them had spent years acting like bullies and gangsters, but now they are terrified. One by one, they begin begging Hwa Jin for forgiveness. However, Hwa Jin tells them they are asking the wrong person. If you want forgiveness, he says, ask Kim Hyung. He points to the quiet student they had bullied, beaten, and humiliated every single day. Overwhelmed with emotion, Kim Hyung begins to cry. For the first time in a long time, someone has finally stood up for him and given him the justice he deserved. Hwa Jin then addresses the entire school. If you don't want to study, you are free to leave. But never again become an obstacle to someone else's education. Never torment a student who is simply trying to build a better future. With those words, the crisis at Gwyn Technical High School finally comes to an end. From that point forward, tattoos, drugs, gang activity, violence, and bullying are completely banned from the school. The campus gradually transforms from a battleground into a real place of learning. After completing their mission, Hwa-jin and Bong return to the Ministry of Education and report their success. That night, Hwa-jin returns home alone. As the city grows quiet, he sits in silence and gazes at a photograph of the woman he once loved, the woman who is no longer alive. The victory at the school may be over, but the pain of his past still remains with him. Years earlier, before the creation of the Student Protection Task Force, Hwa-jin's wife worked as a teacher. Every morning, he would drive her to school before heading to work. He always warned her to be careful of the violent gang members causing trouble at schools, but she would simply smile and say, "The day adults become afraid of children is the day society begins to collapse." Sadly, her words proved tragically true. One day she was brutally attacked by a student gangster and later died from her injuries. What made the tragedy even worse was that the court sentenced the attacker to only 4 years in prison. Hwa-jin was furious and heartbroken. At that time, Gang Seok was running for Minister of Education. Seeing Hwa-jin's pain, he made him a promise. "If I win this election," he said, "I will create a special organization to fight school violence and protect teachers and students. I will dedicate it to the memory of my daughter and your wife." The following day, as usual, Hwa-jin visits the minister's office and asks which school their team will be assigned to next. While reviewing reports, they come across the case of a teacher who recently took his own life. The investigation reveals a shocking story. A student named Yeri, who was extremely popular on social media, had falsely accused the teacher of sexual assault. Most girls in her class desperately wanted to be her friend because of her online fame. Yeri constantly live-streamed during class, caring more about her followers than her education. One day, a teacher confiscated her phone so she would pay attention in class. Furious, Yeri edited a fake video designed to humiliate the teacher online. Another teacher secretly witnessed her manipulating the footage and later confronted her, begging her to stop spreading lies. Instead of listening, Yeri made an even bigger accusation. She publicly claimed that the teacher had tried to assault her. The false accusation spread everywhere. People immediately turned against the teacher. He became the target of endless insults and criticism. Even his own wife began questioning him after seeing the allegations online. Unable to endure the humiliation and pressure, the innocent teacher eventually took his own life. When Hwa-jin and the minister learn the full truth, they decide that the school will become their next mission. The following day, Teacher Young informs the students that a new teacher will be replacing the deceased instructor. However, the moment the new teacher enters the classroom, the students begin mocking her. They ask inappropriate questions and try to humiliate her. One girl sarcastically comments that she looks different because of makeup and demands to see old photographs of her. Soon, the entire class joins in, shouting for her old pictures. At the center of the chaos is Yeri, who is once again live-streaming everything. The new teacher calmly orders her to stop. Yeri refuses. Without hesitation, the teacher grabs Yeri's phone and smashes it against the floor. The entire classroom falls silent. Looking directly at the students, she says, "You may not know me, but you're about to. My name is Han Rim, and I work with the Student Protection Task Force. I came here to teach you discipline. From now on, nobody talks back to me. My rules are the only rules that matter in this classroom." The students are left speechless. Han Rim collects every phone in the room and explains the regulations they will be expected to follow from now on. Meanwhile, Hwa-jin meets with the school's teachers and tells them to submit reports about every serious offense committed by troublesome students so appropriate disciplinary action can be taken. The principal attempts to defend the school, insisting that the students are well behaved. Hwa-jin immediately shuts him down. The day adults become afraid of children is the day society begins to collapse. The principal has no response. Hwa-jin then instructs the teachers to write down every complaint they have and identify the students responsible for causing problems. Outside, Han Rim is busy disciplining the most disruptive students in the school. Later, she reports back to Hwa-jin, who praises her performance and dedication. The next morning, Han Rim arrives to find the classroom filthy. She immediately orders every student to clean it, and they quickly begin scrubbing the room under her supervision. Later, Han Rim tells Hwa Jin that teacher Jung appears extremely stressed. She fears that angry parents and public criticism may eventually break her spirit. Hwa Jin tells her not to worry. "I'll speak to her myself," he says. "In the meantime, investigate the students' social media accounts and collect everything they've been posting online." That evening, Hwa Jin begins examining the students' online activity while Han Rim gathers photographs and evidence connected to their misconduct. The next day, Han Rim arrives at school carrying a file filled with evidence. She informs the students that they have committed serious violations and will soon face strict punishment. Meanwhile, teacher Young is falling apart emotionally. She discovers that students have illegally spread private photographs of her across the internet. The humiliation becomes so overwhelming that she can barely sleep. Eventually, she decides to resign from teaching altogether. Fortunately, her colleagues convince her not to give up. The next day, Hwa Jin meets with her personally. Teacher Young tearfully explains that everyone now believes she is a terrible person because of the images circulating online. In response, Hwa Jin shares his own story. He tells her about his wife, a kind and dedicated teacher who lost her life because of violence at school. Then he shows her something unexpected. Among all the hateful messages online, several students had secretly written encouraging letters supporting her and thanking her for her hard work. As teacher Young reads the messages, tears begin streaming down her face. For the first time in weeks, she feels hope again. Hwa Jin gently tells her not to abandon her students or her profession. The following day, teacher Young returns to class with renewed confidence. She begins disciplining students who refuse to pay attention, especially Yeri, who remains the most troublesome student in the school. After class, Yeri once again attempts to spread hateful posts about teacher Young online. But something strange happens. Her account suddenly begins losing content. Post after post disappears before her eyes. Panicked, she watches everything being deleted. The people responsible are none other than the Student Protection Task Force, led by Hwa Jin and backed by the Minister of Education. Enraged, Yeri storms toward teacher Young and even attempts to attack her. Before she can do anything, members of the task force intervene. Yeri is immediately restrained and receives severe disciplinary punishment for her actions. Once again, the Student Protection Task Force succeeds in restoring order. In the end, the Minister of Education holds a press conference and announces that the violent female gang operating at Soyeon Girls' School has been dismantled. The school has finally become a safe place where teachers can teach without fear and students can learn without being threatened by bullying, violence, or social media abuse. Another mission has been completed, and once again, Hwa Jin's team proves why they were created in the first place, to protect the innocent and restore justice inside schools. The story continues as a group of politicians opposed to the Minister of Education holds a press conference. They accuse the minister of being dishonest, claiming that the Student Protection Task Force is not really about protecting students. According to them, the minister is only using the organization to take revenge for his daughter, who was killed by school gangsters. They also reveal that Hwa Jin's late wife was one of the victims of school violence. When Han Rim hears this, she is shocked. For the first time, she begins to wonder whether the accusations might contain some truth. Soon afterward, the minister and his team hold a meeting to discuss their next mission. Their target is a prestigious international language school. At the same time, a shocking incident occurs at the school when a student violently attacks one of his teachers. Hwa Jin and his team are immediately dispatched to investigate. When they arrive, they are surprised by the enormous size and reputation of the campus. Seo Young explains the school's history to Han Rim and tells her about teacher Cheon, one of the most respected teachers in the institution. Many of his students are accepted into the country's top universities, making him a highly admired figure. Meanwhile, Hwa Jin meets the teacher who was attacked and asks what caused the student to become so angry. The teacher calmly explains his side of the story. During the conversation, Hwa Jin asks him to repeat the famous phrase he often tells his students, "Always believe in your talents and abilities." When the teacher says it, Hwa Jin smiles and even applauds him. He appears genuinely impressed by the teacher's educational philosophy. Elsewhere, Han Rim interviews the student who attacked the teacher. The boy is furious and refuses to cooperate. "If I tell you the truth, you won't believe me anyway," he says. "Do whatever you want. Punish me or arrest me." Han Rim tries to calm him down, but he remains silent. As the investigation continues, Hua Jin interviews another student. She describes teacher Cheon as an excellent educator who has brought great honor to the school. According to her, he works tirelessly for his students and even celebrates their achievements when they succeed. At the same time, Han Rim speaks with Seo Young, who informs her that the student, Hyeon, is one of the school's highest-ranking students. Determined to uncover the truth, Han Rim questions Hyun again. She asks why one of the best students in the school would suddenly attack a respected teacher. At first, he refuses to answer. Only after being pressured does he finally reveal the truth. He explains that his family's restaurant was forced to close after teacher Cheon publicly accused it of operating illegally. As a result, his family fell into financial ruin. They could barely afford his tuition anymore. His parents later hired a private tutor to help him continue his studies. However, teacher Cheon allegedly pressured the tutor into abandoning him as well, leaving Hyeon with nowhere to turn. Meanwhile, teacher Cheon gives his own interview to Hwa Jin. He claims that Hyun was arrogant, frequently disrupted class, walked out during lessons, and constantly caused trouble. Surprisingly, Hwa Jin seems satisfied with the explanation. But Han Rim is furious. She confronts him directly. "Why are you only listening to one side?" she asks. "We're supposed to find the truth. Is this really how we're supposed to do our job?" Hwa Jin simply tells her not to rush to conclusions and to continue investigating. Later, Seo Young visits the private academy where Hyun used to study. There, he meets Hyun's former tutor and uncovers the hidden connection between the tutor and teacher Cheon. Armed with new evidence, Hwa Jin confronts teacher Cheon. He reveals that he has discovered the truth about the private academy and how teacher Cheon secretly manipulates student rankings. Wealthy families pay him to ensure their children receive top scores, while less privileged students are intentionally pushed down the rankings. Teacher Cheon immediately becomes angry and storms away. The following day, he secretly meets one of the wealthy parents who desperately wants her daughter to receive high grades. She refuses to accept poor scores for her child, and teacher Cheon confidently promises that he will make sure the girl passes with excellent marks. Meanwhile, Han Rim still struggles to trust Hwa Jin. She worries that the accusations against him may be true and fears he is no longer acting objectively. Seo Young reassures her and urges her to have faith in him. Suddenly, the situation takes a dramatic turn. Police officers arrive and arrest Hwa Jin and several members of the task force. They are accused of abusing their authority and carrying out personal vendettas. Even the Minister of Education is arrested. The scandal dominates television news across the country. At the same time, teacher Cheon secretly passes examination materials to one of the wealthy parents to ensure her daughter achieves top scores. Before being taken away, the minister quietly instructs Seo Young to continue the investigation since he is the only member of the team who remains free. Soon, the day of the examination arrives. Teacher Cheon approaches the student he helped and confidently tells her to do well. Meanwhile, the minister and his team are brought before the court, where prosecutors accuse them of using the task force as a tool for revenge. Then everything changes. Teacher Cheon suddenly discovers that the examination papers have been replaced. Panicked, he rushes into the classroom and tries to stop the test. But Hwa Jin appears and calmly reveals the truth. The task force switched the exams. Their operation has succeeded. Teacher Cheon's corruption is exposed in front of everyone. His secret dealings, evidence, recordings, and conversations are publicly revealed. The entire school learns how he accepted favors from wealthy families and manipulated student results. The student who received the leaked exam is overwhelmed with shame and desperately tries to destroy the evidence, but it is already too late. At the same time, Hwa Jin meets Hyun and tells him something he has waited a long time to hear. "You were right all along." For the first time, someone finally acknowledges the injustice he suffered. Meanwhile, the Minister of Education successfully defends himself against all accusations. Standing before the public, he exposes the hidden crimes of corrupt politicians, wealthy parents, and influential figures one by one. He openly reveals their names and explains how they bribed teachers to secure unfair advantages for their children. "There is nowhere left to hide," he declares. "No matter how powerful you are, we will find you." In the end, the Student Protection Task Force achieves another major victory. The student who had been wronged visits the team to personally thank them for restoring justice. And finally, Teacher Cheon, the man everyone once praised and respected, is arrested for corruption, fraud, and betraying the very students he was supposed to guide. The truth is exposed, justice prevails, and another school is saved from those who abused their power behind the mask of education. The story now introduces a woman named Choi Ji-seon, an elementary school teacher at Hyeojung Elementary School. One day, she is seen writing a farewell letter to her mother, and it is immediately clear that she is carrying a heavy burden. After finishing the letter, she attempts to take her own life by hanging herself. Fortunately, in the very last moments, Han Rim arrives and saves her, pulling her down before it is too late. Han Rim introduces herself and explains that she works for the ERPB. She tells Choi that the organization is hosting a psychological support workshop for elementary school teachers and invites her to attend. Choi joins the program, where she is informed that the ERPB has arranged a temporary leave of absence from teaching so she can focus on recovering her mental health. We then learn that Choi's mother personally visited the ERPB office and begged Hwa Jin to help her daughter. She explained that Choi had become emotionally unstable and was having suicidal thoughts. Later, Han Rim and Bong sit down with Choi and tell her that her mother shared everything with them. They strongly encourage her to seek professional counseling. They also explain that a substitute teacher has already been assigned to her class while she takes time off. Choi becomes worried that the replacement teacher might end up suffering the same hardships she endured, but Han Rim reassures her not to worry. The following day, the new substitute teacher arrives. To everyone's surprise, it is Hwa Jin himself. As soon as he enters the classroom, he discovers that teaching young children is far more difficult than he expected. The students are energetic, noisy, and completely ignore instructions. The classroom quickly turns into chaos. One child asks to be taken to the restroom, then another asks for help with something else. Before long, several children are demanding his attention at the same time. At one point, Hwa Jin accidentally raises his voice at a student, causing the child to burst into tears. Realizing his mistake, he is forced to comfort the student and play games to cheer them up. The moment the other children see this, they all line up, wanting him to play with them as well. By the time school ends, Hwa Jin is completely exhausted. That night he returns home and sits quietly, looking through photographs of his late wife. As he stares at the pictures, memories begin flooding back. The story then flashes back to Choi Ji-seon's very first day as a teacher. She warmly welcomed her new students and their parents, introducing herself and asking each child for their name. One student named Woo Jin stood up during class, and Choi gently asked him to sit down. After school, however, Woo Jin's mother obtained Choi's contact information. Shortly afterward, she sent a message saying, "When you told Woo Jin to sit down, your tone was too harsh. Be more careful next time." Choi immediately apologized and promised it would not happen again. The next day, Choi asked Woo Jin to participate in a classroom activity. The boy suddenly started crying. Almost immediately, his mother sent another complaint. "Don't ask my child questions in front of everyone again." From that point forward, Woo Jin's mother constantly bombarded Choi with messages. She instructed her exactly how to treat her son, demanded special treatment for him, and insisted that even when he was clearly wrong, Choi should always take his side. The messages came day and night. Gradually, the constant harassment began affecting Choi's mental health. She became anxious whenever her phone vibrated. Even spending time with friends became difficult because she was always worried another complaint would arrive. One day, Woo Jin's mother sent her yet another angry message, this time criticizing a photograph Choi had posted on Instagram. The picture itself was completely harmless. Choi was shocked. She had never told the woman about her Instagram account and could not understand how she had found it. Desperate, Choi reported everything to the school administration and explained the harassment she had been suffering. Instead of helping her, the principal blamed her. "Change your Instagram account," the principal said. "Better yet, delete all your social media." Heartbroken, Choi returned home in tears. That night, she deleted her Instagram account. In her journal, she wrote that she would reactivate it someday, after she finally quit teaching. The next morning, determined to do her best despite everything, Choi arrived early at school and began decorating the classroom. She installed colorful lights, brought in decorations, and created a play area to make learning more enjoyable for the children. She also spent extra time building a relationship with Eugene. Slowly but surely, the shy boy began opening up. He started interacting with his classmates and becoming more comfortable around others. One day, while playing with the other children, Eugene got into a fight with another student and struck the child with one of the toys they were using. Choi immediately wanted to stop him and discipline him properly, but then she remembered the words his mother had repeatedly told her. "Even if my son is wrong, you should always take his side." Caught between professional responsibility and fear of another complaint, Choi hesitated. In the end, she comforted the crying child, then turned to Woo-jin and gently told him to apologize. It was only a small incident, but it showed just how trapped she had become, forced to choose between doing what was right and protecting herself from a parent who seemed determined to control every part of her life. The next day, the mothers of Woo-jin and Seo-jun are called to the school to discuss the incident between their children. When Woo-jin's mother learns that her son was made to apologize, she becomes furious. Even though her son was the one who started the fight and injured the other child, she refuses to accept any responsibility. Instead, she begins causing a scene and arguing with Seo-jun's mother. Woo-jin tries to stop his mother, but she ignores him completely. Rather than blaming her own son, she turns her anger toward Ms. Choi. She demands to know why the teacher forced Woo-jin to apologize and begins shouting at her in front of everyone. Before long, the confrontation escalates into threats and intimidation. After leaving the school, Woo-jin's mother continues harassing Ms. Choi through phone calls. She constantly calls her number, threatening and insulting her. At the same time, Seo-jun's mother also puts pressure on Ms. Choi, repeatedly blaming her and raising her voice at her. Caught between two angry parents, Ms. Choi begins suffering severe emotional stress. The constant pressure leaves her unable to sleep. Day and night, the parents call her phone, filling her mind with anxiety until she can no longer think about anything else. Eventually, things become even worse. The parents begin showing up at her home to threaten her in person. Woo-jin's mother even warns Ms. Choi that she will file legal complaints involving her husband if necessary. The following day, Woo-jin's father arrives at the school. He aggressively drags his son around the classroom, frightening the other children so badly that some of them begin crying. Soon afterward, Woo-jin's mother arrives as well. She informs Ms. Choi that she has already filed a complaint against her and intends to report her to the police, accusing her of emotionally harming her child. Before long, an official investigation is opened against Ms. Choi. She is summoned to the police station, and the story quickly spreads across social media. Rumors begin circulating that an elementary school teacher abused a young child. As the controversy grows, many parents start withdrawing their children from her classroom. Watching her reputation collapse breaks Ms. Choi's heart. Feeling completely abandoned and overwhelmed, she eventually reaches the point where she considers ending her life. Meanwhile, the ERPB team has been monitoring her case from the beginning. Determined to restore justice, they continue gathering evidence and investigating the truth behind the accusations. At the same time, Hwa-jin continues teaching the students who once belonged to Ms. Choi's class. Soon, Woo-jin's mother discovers that the new teacher has assigned homework to her son. Immediately, she storms into the school and demands that Hwa-jin stop giving Woo-jin extra work. However, Hwa-jin decides to teach her a lesson. Just as she constantly harassed Ms. Choi with endless calls, Hwa-jin begins calling her repeatedly. He contacts her throughout the day, asking endless questions about how he should treat her son. He even calls late at night, refusing to give her any peace. Before long, Woo-jin's mother starts experiencing the same frustration and stress she once inflicted on Ms. Choi. Unable to tolerate it, she marches into the school and angrily demands that Hwa-jin reduce the number of calls because her husband has become furious about the situation. But Hwa-jin is not finished. One day, he visits Woo-jin's father's workplace. In front of everyone, he grabs the man's legs and dramatically begs for forgiveness, crying and pleading not to lose his job. The scene shocks everyone around them. When Woo-jin's father returns home, he takes out his frustration on his wife. The couple begins arguing loudly in front of their son, creating even more tension within the family. The next morning, Woo-jin's mother returns to the school office to file another complaint against Hwa-jin. This time, however, the staff refuse to entertain her accusations. They simply tell her that if she has a complaint, she should contact the ERPB directly. Furious, she storms away. She then goes to the classroom and takes her son with her. At that moment, Hua Jin files a report against Mrs. Lee, accusing her of child abuse after she forcefully grabbed and dragged her son out of the classroom. News of the accusation quickly spreads among the other parents, and soon they begin criticizing Mrs. Lee for her behavior. Desperate, Mrs. Lee tries calling Ms. Choi, but her calls go unanswered. Angry and frustrated, she heads straight to Ms. Choi's house. However, when she arrives, she finds Hua Jin already there. For the first time, someone forces her to confront the consequences of her actions and see how much damage she has caused. Later, Jin finally gets the chance to meet Ms. Choi again. The meeting happens because he personally asked to see her. During their conversation, Jin admits something heartbreaking. "I'm really sad because of what my mother did to you," he says quietly. "Sometimes I think my mom hates me." Ms. Choi gently comforts him and reassures him that his mother does love him, even if her actions have hurt both of them. Meanwhile, Hua Jin and Mrs. Lee watch the conversation through a nearby window. As Mrs. Lee sees how much Jin genuinely cares about Ms. Choi, she is overcome with guilt. For the first time, she realizes the pain her behavior has caused, not only to the teacher, but also to her own son. In the end, Mrs. Lee and her husband are brought before the court. All the evidence regarding the harassment, intimidation, false accusations, and emotional abuse inflicted upon Ms. Choi is presented before the judge. Both parents are held accountable for their actions and receive legal punishment. At last, justice is served. Ms. Choi's name is cleared, her suffering is acknowledged, and both she and her mother finally receive the justice they had been waiting for. The nightmare that nearly destroyed her life finally comes to an end. Meanwhile, the Minister of Education holds a press conference to explain the importance of the ERPB. He emphasizes that anyone who suffers abuse, bullying, or injustice within an educational institution should contact the organization so that their rights can be protected and restored. At last, Ms. Choi is able to return to the elementary school she loves. Reunited with her students, she resumes teaching with a smile, finally free from the nightmare that had nearly destroyed her life. Elsewhere, Hua Jin spends time reading his late wife's journal. As he turns the pages, he reflects on her pain and her desperate wish to receive justice. He remembers the student responsible for her suffering, a boy who once claimed that he had admired and cared for teacher Choi Ga-hyun. Lost in his memories, Hua Jin is interrupted by Minister Gong, who warns him that many people now believe the ERPB exists solely for personal revenge. "You need to let go of the past," the minister tells him. "People think this organization was created because of your wife and my daughter. You can't allow those emotions to control your decisions." The following day, while the team is driving together, they witness a shocking scene. Several middle school students are speeding through the streets in a stolen vehicle. Inside the car is a terrified girl being held against her will. The students had forced her into the vehicle after stealing it. The ERPB team immediately decides to intervene and begins pursuing them. Instead of stopping, the students become even more reckless. They throw objects at Hua Jin's vehicle and accelerate through crowded areas, damaging property and putting countless civilians at risk. A major accident is only seconds away, but Han Rim manages to stop the vehicle before a catastrophe occurs. The students are taken to the police station, where investigators question the girl about what happened. However, because the boys had threatened her, she claims that they are simply friends and insists that nothing serious occurred. The students then use their age as a shield, arguing that they are minors and therefore cannot face serious legal consequences. As a result, they are released. Unfortunately, the moment they regain their freedom, they return to causing trouble. They continue stealing and vandalizing vehicles as if nothing had happened. When the ERPB team and the minister witness this, the minister decides enough is enough. He orders an immediate operation to begin the next day at Hyunjin Middle School, the school attended by the 4 troublemakers. The following morning, Hua Jin arrives at the school and meets the 4 boys. At the same time, Han Rim begins interviewing other students in the class. She asks whether anyone has seen a girl named Ha Yun. The students appear terrified. It is obvious that they know something, but they are too frightened to speak against the bullies. Meanwhile, Bong and Han Rim secretly follow the 4 boys in hopes of discovering where they have been hiding their victim. Eventually, they make a horrifying discovery. Ha-yun is found locked inside a storage cabinet. Her body is covered in bruises and injuries, showing clear signs of prolonged abuse. The team immediately rescues her and takes her somewhere safe. At first, she refuses to speak. Hoping to uncover the truth, they search her school bag and find several pills. The pills appear to be illegal substances that the boys had been forcing her to consume. Eventually, Ha-yun gathers the courage to tell her story. She explains that when she first transferred to the school, other students constantly complimented her appearance. "You're so pretty," they would tell her. "You look like a celebrity. If you lost a little weight, you'd be even more beautiful." One day, a boy from her class approached her with some pills. He claimed they would help her become thinner and more attractive. To convince her, he dissolved one of the pills in water and encouraged her to drink it. From that day on, a student named Ji-eung regularly supplied Ha-yun with the pills. He charged her increasingly large amounts of money, taking advantage of her insecurities. Eventually, Ha-yun could no longer afford them. When she asked for more without payment, Ji-eung proposed a solution. He told her to sell the pills to other girls at school and keep recruiting new customers. Desperate and vulnerable, she agreed. For a while, she distributed the pills to other students, but eventually she realized how dangerous the situation had become. When she told them she wanted to stop, the boys turned against her. What followed was a campaign of bullying, threats, and physical violence. The abuse became so severe that Ha-yun eventually decided to report everything to the police. But her hopes were crushed. Because the students involved were still minors, the authorities were unable to impose significant punishment. The boys were simply released and allowed to return to their normal lives. For Ha-yun, it felt as if nobody cared about what had happened to her. The people responsible walked free, while she was left alone to carry the trauma of everything they had done. After returning to school, the four boys begin taking revenge on Ha-yun for reporting them. They beat her, punish her, and eventually lock her inside a storage cabinet once again. Ha-yun tells Han-rim that despite everything she has suffered, nobody has ever truly punished the students responsible. She confesses that she has even thought about taking her own life because she feels that justice will never come. Han-rim gently reassures her and makes a promise. "The ERPB will get justice for you," she says. Filled with anger after hearing Ha-yun's story, Han-rim confronts the four boys and informs Hwa-jin that they have been selling drugs to students. The boys respond with arrogant smiles. "What can you do about it?" they mock. "We're just kids. Nobody can touch us." Instead of arguing, Hwa-jin and Han-rim come up with a new plan. They release their trained dog, which immediately begins chasing the boys one by one, sending them into a panic. Soon afterward, the four students are captured and transported to a juvenile rehabilitation facility designed for young offenders. Upon arrival, their phones are confiscated, their hair is shaved, they are dressed in identical uniforms, and they are assigned to a monitored dormitory under Han-rim's supervision. The boys immediately try to act tough and challenge Han-rim. That proves to be a huge mistake. Han-rim quickly puts them in their place and teaches them a lesson they will never forget. From then on, their new routine begins. Every morning, they are forced to wake up before sunrise, clean toilets, perform physical training, and follow strict schedules. When breakfast arrives, they encounter other juvenile offenders already being held at the facility. Many of them are far more dangerous than they are. For the first time, the four boys begin feeling genuinely afraid. Afterward, they are assigned cleaning duties and forced to wash dishes and cafeteria equipment. One day, one of the boys gets into an argument with a quiet-looking inmate and decides to beat him up, assuming he is weak. However, Hwa-jin immediately reveals the truth. The seemingly harmless inmate is actually infamous throughout the country. Years ago, he was constantly bullied by classmates. After enduring years of abuse, he eventually snapped and killed every student who had tormented him. The media gave him a terrifying nickname, the Bully Killer. When the four boys learn who he is, they are horrified. From that day onward, they avoid him whenever possible and become visibly nervous whenever he is nearby. Later, the bully killer secretly steals a knife from the kitchen equipment being cleaned by the inmates. The four boys witness it happen. At first, they consider reporting him to the guards, but the bully killer notices them watching. He calmly threatens them and warns that their time in the facility will become a living nightmare if they say anything. The boys are immediately terrified and remain silent. Meanwhile, outside the facility, public protests erupt against the Minister of Education. Many of the protesters are parents of the children who have been sent to the rehabilitation center. They accuse the minister of being too harsh and threaten to remove him from office. Eventually, the parents are allowed to visit their children. When they arrive and see their sons with shaved heads, cleaning duties, and strict discipline, they explode with anger and begin shouting at the minister. At that moment, Hua Jin steps forward carrying evidence. He reveals the drugs the boys had been distributing and explains how they sold them to other students. The parents are then shown detailed records of the crimes their children committed, including bullying, drug distribution, violence, and intimidation. The Minister of Education calmly addresses them. "We are not torturing your children," he says. "We are correcting the harm they caused and teaching them accountability." For the first time, the boys begin crying. They beg for forgiveness and promise to change, but the minister interrupts them. "Don't ask us for forgiveness," he says. "Ask the girl whose life you destroyed." Ha-yun is then brought before them. The boys immediately apologize and plead for mercy. However, Ha-yun looks them in the eyes and says something that leaves everyone silent. "I will never forgive you. You turned my life into a nightmare." The minister then informs the parents that their request for immediate release has been denied. The boys will remain in rehabilitation custody and continue serving their sentence. Ha-yun finally receives the justice she had been denied for so long. The 4 boys are returned to the facility and informed that they will remain under supervision until they reach adulthood. Later, it is revealed that the infamous bully killer had actually been cooperating with Hua Jin all along. The entire plan was designed to frighten the boys and force them to experience the same fear, helplessness, and suffering that they had inflicted on Ha-yun and other victims. Hua Jin wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions and confront the reality of the pain they had caused. However, things soon take an unexpected turn. One day, another inmate at the facility secretly obtains a knife and suddenly attacks one of the 4 boys, turning what had been a lesson in accountability into a life-threatening situation. The rehabilitation center is thrown into chaos as the shocking incident unfolds. Meanwhile, the Minister of Education and his team hold a meeting to discuss the growing problems of drug abuse and gambling among students. While they are in the middle of the discussion, a man suddenly rushes into the office in tears, desperately begging for help. The team listens as he explains his situation. He tells them that his son has become addicted to gambling. One day he received a phone call demanding repayment of a debt his son had accumulated through gambling. When the family confronted the boy, he admitted that he had lost 870,000 won. His parents were horrified. Despite their disappointment, they paid off the debt and made him promise never to gamble again. Unfortunately, the promise did not last. The boy returned to gambling, causing even more financial problems. His father eventually became overwhelmed with debt and was forced to sacrifice much of his livelihood to cover the losses. He also discovered that his son had begun using drugs. Whenever he sought help from the authorities, he felt as though nobody was willing to intervene. After hearing the story, the minister tells him, "You are a brave father. We will help you." The next day, a new student named Guillaume Day transfers into a school. As soon as he arrives, he notices that many students are obsessed with an online gambling game. One student wins a large amount of money and celebrates by buying food for everyone. While they eat together, they teach Guillaume Day how to play the game and tell him that it is an easy way to make money. Before long, Jumdai becomes interested. He excitedly tells his friends about the game and the student who introduced him to it. Soon, he is spending entire nights gambling online. At first, he believes he can win, but instead he loses repeatedly. The following morning, he arrives at school depressed and exhausted. One of his friends, Seon Bin, encourages him not to give up and even helps him borrow money so he can continue gambling. To secure the loan, Jumdae is forced to provide his mother's contact information. Later, while Jumdae is at work with his friends, the lender calls demanding repayment. Han Rim happens to answer the phone while pretending to be his mother. The caller demands 600,000 won. Han Rim responds that she cannot possibly pay such a large amount. At that moment, the ERPB team realizes how serious the situation has become. They decide to pay off the debt temporarily while focusing on tracking down the criminal organization behind the gambling operation. The next day, Jumdae heads to school as usual. Han-rim secretly watches over him from a distance. However, while distracted by ordering food because she is hungry, she briefly loses sight of him. That moment proves costly. A group of gang members kidnaps Gyumdae, throws his phone onto the road, and drives away with him. At the same time, the gang is forcing girls to steal money from stores as part of their criminal activities. Han-rim is devastated when she realizes she failed to protect him and blames herself for what happened. Meanwhile, the gang keeps Gyumdae captive and forces him to work on computers for them. Because of his skills, he proves useful, and they reward him with food while continuing to exploit him. Back at school, Han-rim captures the student who originally introduced Gyumdae to gambling. Under pressure, he reveals the address of the gang's hideout. The ERPB immediately launches a rescue operation. Hua Jin and the team storm the location and engage in a fierce fight with the gang members. As expected, Hua Jin overwhelms them one after another. After defeating everyone in his path, he captures the gang leader and punishes him without mercy. The team finally rescues Gyumdae and rushes another victim, Jae Yoon's, to the hospital. The following day, Jae Yoon's father visits the Minister of Education to express his gratitude. However, the minister praises him in return. "You are also a good and courageous father," he says. "You are an example for other parents." He encourages the man to continue supporting his son. Meanwhile, Han-rim buys Gyumdae a new phone to replace the one destroyed during the kidnapping. Elsewhere, while the minister is sitting in a restaurant, he is approached by a political rival running for office under another party. The politician accuses the minister of continuing his crusade against students merely to satisfy a personal desire for revenge over his daughter's death. The minister immediately fires back, accusing the politician of corruption. The argument escalates until the rival politician eventually storms away. After returning to his office, the politician receives information about the minister and the ERPB team from a mysterious source. At the same time, one of the former juvenile inmates is brought to meet him. Meanwhile, a new controversy spreads across the country. A school safety organization proposes mandatory urine testing for students. Publicly, the tests are described as a way to monitor health conditions such as kidney disease and diabetes. However, rumors begin circulating that the real purpose is to detect drug use among students. Many schools oppose the idea. At another school, students are taking their final examinations. One student named Hyun Jin becomes extremely anxious. The pressure overwhelms him, and he eventually collapses. His mother rushes to him and forces him to continue the exam after giving him medication. Soon afterward, Hua Jin and the ERPB arrive at the school to conduct the urine testing program. Several parents strongly object. Hua Jin calmly explains that the tests are necessary to determine whether dangerous substances are being consumed by students. The parents continue protesting. Finally, Hua Jin issues a warning. "If you refuse to bring your children's samples to our hospital tomorrow, there will be consequences." At the same time, the rival politician interviews one of the former students who had previously been disciplined by Hua Jin's team. The next day, Hyunjin's mother discovers that her son failed to earn admission into the medical college she had dreamed of for him. She breaks down, crying. "For years I've suffered and sacrificed everything for your education," she says. "You've broken my heart." Hyunjin begins crying as well, unable to answer. Rather than accepting the result, his mother pushes him even harder, constantly pressuring him to study and eventually enter the prestigious SNU medical school. Later, she meets another mother known for helping students gain admission into SNU. Desperate for a shortcut, she asks for advice and even hires a private tutor for her son. Despite all her efforts, Hyunjin's academic results remain disappointing. Frustrated, she returns to the woman for help. This time, the woman offers her a special drug that supposedly improves memory and concentration. Hyunjin begins taking it. Meanwhile, Hua Jin learns about the medication and warns them not to use it. But Hyunjin's mother refuses to listen. She continues searching online for additional substances that promise to improve academic performance. Eventually, she finds another woman advertising a miracle drug that supposedly guarantees higher rankings for students. She purchases the drug and gives it to her son. At first, it appears to work. Hyunjin's grades improve dramatically. However, the success comes at a terrible cost. When the ERPB reviews the urine test results, they discover traces of illegal substances in Hyunjin's system. Hua Jin and his team immediately head to the family's home. His mother refuses to open the door. The team is forced to enter through another route and rush Hyunjin to the hospital. There, Hwajin finally explodes in anger. He confronts the mother and tells her that she has completely failed her responsibilities as a parent. "You nearly destroyed your own son with these drugs," he says. Hyunjin's physical appearance has already begun changing because of the substances, and his mental condition is deteriorating rapidly. He is close to a complete breakdown. To make the mother understand what she has done, Hwajin forces her to experience the same exhausting lifestyle she imposed on her son. He recreates the exact study schedule she forced him to follow every day and makes her endure it herself. Eventually, Hyunjin receives proper medical treatment and slowly recovers. One day, his mother visits him in the hospital. Even then, she continues insisting that he must attend medical school. This time, Hyunjin finally stands up for himself. "You can live your life," he tells her. "I'll live mine." With those words, he walks away. Later, the Minister of Education holds another press conference. He reveals that many students across the country have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs and dangerous substances. He warns both parents and students about the risks and announces strict measures against anyone distributing such drugs. After the conference, Hwajin examines samples of the substance found in Hyunjin's system. To his surprise, experts inform him that the drug is not new at all. In fact, it had been circulating several years earlier. Realizing that a much larger network may be involved, Hwajin understands that an even bigger investigation is about to begin. The story then shifts to a massive public demonstration, mostly attended by students. The crowd is protesting the release of a former juvenile offender and chanting slogans demanding justice. We soon learn that the student at the center of the controversy is Choi Gu-cheol, the same boy who, 2 years earlier, was responsible for the death of the Minister of Education's daughter, who was also the woman Hwajin loved. Despite his personal feelings, the minister is forced to accept Gu-cheol's release. If he opposes it, the public will accuse him of using the herb solely as a tool for personal revenge. Meanwhile, Hwajin is assigned to monitor Gu-cheol and investigate the school he now attends. One day, Gu-cheol witnesses a group of bullies tormenting students inside the classroom. They constantly harass and intimidate weaker classmates while acting as though nobody can stop them. Later that night, Gu-cheol secretly sneaks into the classroom and retrieves a hidden stash of drugs that had been concealed there. The following morning, Gu-cheol unexpectedly visits the Ministry of Education. Han-rim immediately becomes furious when she sees him. But the minister calmly reminds everyone that the office is open to anyone seeking help. Gu-cheol explains that he wants to file a complaint. He reports a group of students who have been bullying others and shows them a photograph of a boy named Seong-gu, claiming that Seong-gu is one of the victims. After hearing the story, Hwajin decides to personally investigate the case. Han-rim objects and tries to stop him because of Gu-cheol's past, but Hwajin refuses to back down. The next day, Hwajin arrives at Jiwon High School and meets Seong-gu. During the interview, Seong-gu insists that nobody is bullying him and claims everything is fine. When Hwajin approaches the students accused of being the bullies, Seong-gu unexpectedly defends them so fiercely that it becomes suspicious. Meanwhile, Bong attempts to follow the students and investigate the gaming center where they spend most of their time. Unfortunately, one of the boys recognizes him, forcing him to leave before he can gather useful information. Instead, Bong sends Han-rim undercover. Using a disguise and a completely altered appearance, Han-rim infiltrates the group without raising suspicion. While investigating, she secretly records Chiho's voice. Bong then uses the recording to impersonate him over the phone and tricks Seong-gu into revealing information about their gaming accounts. Soon afterward, the herb hacks into the accounts and uncovers evidence of suspicious activity. Their investigation reveals that Seong-gu is an exceptionally talented gamer. Despite juggling school and other responsibilities, he is skilled enough to consistently win games and earn rewards. However, when the owner of one of the gaming accounts discovers that money has been withdrawn from it, he immediately blames Seong-gu and physically attacks him. The next day, while Seong-gu is with his mother, Chi-ho and his family arrive to file another complaint. This time, they accuse Seong-gu of sending inappropriate videos to Chi-ho's sister. Seong-gu insists that he never did such a thing, but nobody believes him. To make matters worse, his mother discovers that large amounts of money have disappeared from her account and were apparently used for gambling. Even she begins doubting her son's innocence. Feeling abandoned by everyone around him, Seong-gu sits alone and breaks down in tears. At that moment, Gu Cheol approaches him. The two begin talking, and Gu Cheol quietly says something meaningful. "If the herb had existed 3 years ago, I might never have become a killer." His words leave a deep impression on Seong-gu. Gu Cheol then takes him directly to the herb office and encourages him to trust the people there. However, while they are at the office, another herb employee arrives with troubling news. Chi-ho has officially filed a bullying complaint against Seong-gu. A formal hearing is arranged. During the proceedings, Chi-ho portrays himself as the victim, while Seong-gu struggles to defend himself. Finally, Seong-gu speaks up. He explains that he was the one being bullied all along, and that Chi-ho and his friends regularly stole his money to fund their gambling habits. Unfortunately, Chi-ho's lawyer dismisses everything as lies. He even presents fabricated evidence against Seong-gu and demands financial compensation for the supposed harm done to Chi-ho. The herb team is furious. Later, Hwa Jin finds Seong-gu sitting alone, overwhelmed by sadness and frustration. Hwa Jin tells him not to remain silent. Encouraged by those words, Seong-gu finally opens up. He explains how the friends he trusted betrayed him, stole from him, and manipulated him. He also admits that when he tried to tell the truth, even his own family refused to believe him. Hwa Jin listens carefully before giving him a simple answer: "I believe you, and we're going to help you." At the same time, Han Rim begins the next phase of the operation. Using her new undercover identity, she enrolls at the school and pretends to be a transfer student so she can get close to Chi-ho and his friends. When she tells them they are in the same class, Chi-ho immediately begins acting friendly. However, it quickly becomes obvious that his friendliness is fake and that he intends to use and manipulate her the same way he does everyone else. Han Rim ignores his attempts and remains focused on her mission. Pretending to connect to his phone through a hotspot, she secretly installs a link that gives the herb access to the group's accounts. Soon afterward, Bong successfully hacks into their accounts and uncovers extensive evidence, including financial records and stolen money. When Chi-ho realizes that the new girl was responsible for accessing his phone, he storms into the classroom intending to attack her. But before he can do anything, Han Rim effortlessly defeats him. She beats him so badly that he cannot even fight back. Then she starts screaming for help. Students and teachers rush into the classroom, where Han Rim pretends to be a victim who has just been attacked. A new case is immediately opened. To strengthen the trap, Han Rim pretends to be an injured student who has just been discharged from the hospital, and Chi-ho is accused of assaulting her. Desperate, Chi-ho insists that she is lying and claims that he is actually the victim. In frustration, he even tries to attack her again. That is when the truth is revealed. He is informed that Han Rim is an herb investigator and that the entire operation was conducted to uncover the truth about what happened to Seong-gu. Nearby, Seong-gu and his mother watch everything unfold. Both are overcome with emotion as they finally see justice being served. Hwa Jin then forces Chi-ho to kneel before Seong-gu and apologize. He also confronts the lawyer who knowingly helped Chi-ho fabricate evidence and exploit the situation for money. For the first time, Seong-gu's innocence is publicly recognized. Overjoyed, Seong-gu and his mother thank the entire herb team for believing him when nobody else would. Finally, Gu Cheol personally thanks Hwa Jin as well. Despite everything that happened in the past, Hwa Jin chose to listen to his request and investigate Seong-gu's case fairly. For Gu Cheol, it is proof that the herb truly exists to protect the innocent, not to satisfy personal grudges or seek revenge. That night, after another exhausting day, Hwa Jin and the Minister of Education finally return home. As Hwa Jin walks alone, he reaches for a cigarette, intending to smoke. However, he suddenly remembers something his late love, Ga Yun, used to tell him. Both she and her father had always opposed smoking and drinking, constantly urging him to stay away from such habits. Remembering her words, Hua-jin quietly puts the cigarette away. Meanwhile, when the minister reaches his bedroom, he can no longer hold back his emotions. Alone in the darkness, he breaks down in tears, overwhelmed by how much he misses his daughter. Elsewhere, Chi-ho, still consumed by anger, goes to confront Gu Cheol. However, it soon becomes clear that Gu Cheol was actually the person manipulating Chi-ho from the shadows. In fact, he was the one who encouraged Chi-ho to hire the corrupt lawyer and helped create the entire situation. Then the shocking truth is revealed. Gu Cheol has been orchestrating everything from the beginning. His goal was not justice. His goal was to destroy the reputation of the ERPB. To accomplish that, he murders Chi-ho and stages events in a way that would make the organization look responsible for the tragedy. The next morning, Gu Cheol visits the Ministry of Education. There, he plays a recording that Chi-ho made shortly before his death. In the recording, Chi-ho says, "My entire life was ruined because of the ERPB." The minister is furious. He finally realizes that Gu Cheol never truly changed. Despite pretending to regret his past crimes, he had become even more dangerous than before. Not only had he manipulated innocent people, but he had also dragged the reputation of both the minister and the ERPB through the mud. Soon, every news station in the country is discussing Chi-ho's death. The recording is broadcast publicly, and accusations begin pouring in from all directions. Public trust in the ERPB starts collapsing. Enraged, Hua-jin rushes to the school and confronts Gu Cheol directly. Without hesitation, he punches him. When questioned about his motives, Gu Cheol boldly admits the truth. "Yes," he says, "I wanted the ERPB to disappear." Hua-jin asks whether drugs are behind his actions. Gu Cheol responds that the organization is facing problems far bigger than anyone realizes. As their conversation continues, Gu Cheol begins talking about Ga Yun, Hua-jin's late love. Flashbacks reveal their past. Ga Yun had once tried to help and protect Gu Cheol when he was still a troubled student. She often defended him from gangs and tried to guide him onto a better path. But despite her efforts, Gu Cheol secretly sold illegal pills and became involved in criminal activities. One day, Ga Yun discovered and hid his drugs. Instead of being grateful, Gu Cheol murdered her. The revelation devastates Hua-jin. Unable to control himself, he attacks Gu Cheol again. Yet Gu Cheol remains calm. His plan was never simply to hurt people. It was to destroy Hua-jin, the minister, and the ERPB in front of the entire nation. Meanwhile, opposition politicians hold press conferences attacking the minister and his organization. Even some students begin questioning whether the ERPB should continue to exist. The minister responds publicly by reminding everyone why the organization was created in the first place. Its purpose, he says, was to fight gangs, drugs, violence, and abuse inside schools. At the same time, Hua-jin visits Ga Yun's grave and silently reflects on everything that has happened. Elsewhere, Gu Cheol and his associates continue expanding their drug operation. Their plan is to distribute the pills throughout schools across the country. The drugs spread rapidly. Even ordinary students begin buying and selling them. Teachers notice strange behavior among their students. Some suddenly become obsessed with obtaining pills. Others repeatedly leave class claiming to have headaches, stomach aches, or other illnesses. The drugs are quietly spreading from one school to another. Amid the chaos, Seong-gu secretly contacts Hua-jin and tells him that he has important information. Unfortunately, the gang discovers that Seong-gu is helping the ERPB. At the same time, the minister and Hua-jin launch a nationwide investigation beginning at Soyeon Girls' School. Before they leave, the minister warns Hua-jin, "Don't lose control. Whatever happens, don't beat Gu Cheol. The opposition party is already looking for reasons to attack us." Hua-jin reluctantly agrees. To gather support, the minister records a public message asking teachers throughout the country to cooperate with the investigation and help identify students distributing drugs. The first teacher to volunteer is Ms. Jung. Soon afterward, more and more teachers join the effort. Eventually, schools across the country begin working with the ERPB. Meanwhile, Han Rim and her partner once again go undercover as students. Their investigation leads them to several samples of the new drug. The minister immediately holds another press conference. He announces that the ERPB has identified the person behind the operation, Gyu Cheol, a student attending Jinwon High School. The news spreads rapidly. Students across the country watch the minister's announcement and begin sharing the video online. The final operation begins. Hua Jin and his team move in. They battle numerous gang members protecting the drug network. Despite the overwhelming numbers, Hua Jin defeats them one after another, leaving them sprawled across the ground. Eventually, he reaches Gyu Cheol himself, the man responsible for Ga Yun's death, the man who manipulated students, sold drugs, and tried to destroy the ERPB. The confrontation becomes fierce. During the fight, Gyu Cheol even attacks Hua Jin with a knife. He mocks him and says, "When you see your love again, tell her I said hello, and tell her to forgive me." The battle reaches its climax. Seong-gu is also targeted by the gang during the chaos and becomes one of their victims. Just as the situation grows desperate, Han Rim arrives to support Hua Jin. Together, they finally defeat Gyu Cheol and his remaining followers. For the first time, Gyu Cheol's confidence disappears. Begging for his life, he pleads with Hua Jin for another chance. Hua Jin hesitates. As he looks at him, memories of Ga Yun flood his mind. In the end, he chooses not to kill him. Instead, he allows the law to decide Gyu Cheol's fate. Han Rim takes Gyu Cheol into custody, and the entire gang network is dismantled. One by one, every student involved in the drug operation is arrested. With the crisis finally over, the Minister of Education holds one last public conference. He speaks about the importance of education, responsibility, and good character. He reflects on everything the ERPB has faced: the gangs, the bullying, the drugs, the corruption, and the countless students they fought to protect. He also thanks the teachers who stood beside them during the difficult times. After the conference ends, the minister and the entire ERPB team visit his daughter's grave together. Standing there in silence, they remember everyone who suffered because of school violence and promise to continue protecting future students. In the aftermath, the delinquent students receive appropriate punishment, the drug network is completely dismantled, and even one of the most corrupt politicians involved in the scandals is finally arrested. With justice served and peace restored, the story finally comes to an end.